Hello, my name is Nelson Fragelli, and I invite you now to take a look at this marvelous monument of Christendom, the Sainte Chapelle in Paris, France. The Sainte Chapelle in Paris, in the old town of Paris, was built in the 13th century under the Crusader King St. Louis IX. He ordered the building of this chapel to house the crown of thorns of our Lord Jesus Christ, recently acquired in the Middle East. The Sainte Chapelle is an excellent example of religious architecture in the Middle Ages. As we can see, it's made up mainly of glasses, color. The walls have almost no stone. And the light penetrates the chapel through the stained glasses, and the light brings colors. The first impression of the visitor is a total admiration. It penetrates that ambience full of color, like in a garden where flowers are around. And these colors cheer up his heart. The colors are joyful. They bring a joy to a man's heart. And an impression of glory, of transcendental beauty takes over the man's mind. He doesn't know what to say. He has no commentary. He has not a first idea. He's not able to judge that marvelous expression of art that he has before his eyes. He takes a minute to, so to say, come back to his normal position, reasoning, because his senses are taken by the beauty of the ambience. It's interesting that also the air inside the Sainte Chapelle is different from the outside air. We have the impression of a breath of centuries that is kept there and also collaborates to lift up man's heart in direction of God. After a while, he starts analyzing what he sees. The stained glasses tell the history of the Old Testament. The prophets are seen there, the kings, their deeds, and then the New Testament, our Lord's birth, Bethlehem. Also the first persecutions against the Christians. And it ends up with the history of the acquisition of the crown of thorns by St. Louis the King, and the solemn arrival in Paris, the procession, dignitaries of the kingdom, of different kingdoms of Christendom that were sent to Paris in order to be part of the cortege that took the crown of thorns into the Sainte Chapelle. We could ask ourselves if so much light and color are not in contradiction to the symbol itself, the crown of thorns, that is housed in that chapel. Because the thorns, the crown of thorns, they mean suffering, pains suffered by our Lord during his crucifixion. This is maybe an idea that occurred to us, men of the 21st century, but for the medieval man it was not like this. They lived under the Catholic impression that is formulated by the saying in Latin, ad lucem per crucem. That's to say, we reach the glory through the cross. It's the sacrifice of the cross that takes us to the glory. The chapel shows the glory. It's very clear. In the presence of the crown of thorns showed to everyone that sacrifice cannot be separate from a normal life of a man, of a person in this valley of tears. So the beautiful colors that we see that are joyful, they give the idea of the glory that was conquered by our Lord's sacrifice to mankind with the redemption. Later on, since men sinned, because of the sins of mankind, for instance, Christendom was split by Protestantism, the colors changed. They were not so bright as in the past because the idea of penance took place in Christendom. The medieval man, in his innocence, because he had been recently converted, he thought of God of paradise, of the glory in paradise, of the reward he would receive after fighting, struggling against the sin and the enemies of the faith in this valley of tears. And the Sainte Chapelle was an example of the gate to heaven. The impression that a person in the Sainte Chapelle is in a heavenly ambience is very strong. And this is the idea that one has. The stained glasses showing the history of the Church calls us to be also saints and insert ourselves in that sequence of souls that built up the glory of the Catholic Church. Sainte Chapelle, in fact, there are two chapels, the lower one and the upper one. The upper one for the king, for the queen, for the nobility, military people, high functionaries of the kingdom, and the lower one, also extremely beautiful, totally similar to the upper one, but since it's the lower chapel, there isn't much light, but this lower chapel was destined to the employees of the castle. The chapel was the castle chapel of the king. As we see in the book Return to Order, written by Mr. John Horvath, the vice president of the GFP, the Middle Ages gave to the recently converted pagans a new sense of social life. A sense that social life, life in common, and the life based on the family is a life that contributes to the sanctification of man. We must have peasants and craftsmen, teachers, philosophers, the nobility. So the social classes must exist. They do exist, and they should collaborate with each other in order to reach sanctification for all of them. And the Sainte Chapelle is an example of this strong and powerful social life. I give an example. In Paris, in the Cathedral of Paris, near the Sainte Chapelle, and both have about the same age, 850 years. After Mass, going to the public fair, housewives would discuss theology and philosophy, because the communication between social classes were very intimate and profound. This is an example of organic society. There was no separation. People in university, schools, and military persons, no, together forming a strong body, social body, like is the human body. The organs, they are put together, they have their functions. One is not able to function without the other. So was the society in Middle Ages, and this is the origin also of the name organic society. So the Sainte Chapelle is an example of organic society opposite to the mechanistic society that we have today. In our society, almost always, decisions are taken by technicians we don't know, politicians that are moved by interest, and we suffer the consequence. We can hardly say a word about it. There are thousands of laws that we do not even know because they were prepared, so to say, in rooms, like in laboratory of laws, and then they are imposed upon us. Because what comes first is the idea of a state, the idea of money, the rule of money, like Mr. Horvath explains in his book, and not the man, the soul, a person redeemed by the blood of our Lord Jesus Christ. If we take a look at Russia and communism, which is indeed a barbarian system, what is the beauty that they were able to produce? Any architecture style? Music? Yes, in Russia they kept something that belonged to the past, but everything that they created is ugly. And only the Middle Ages, and also centuries after the Middle Ages, were able to create beauty. Yes, there were in the Middle Ages defects, sins, crimes, but we must understand that they had been recently converted. The pagan life was full of errors, of horrors as well. The church had much patience to little by little act upon their souls in order to take them to a perfection of life. And this perfection of life is proven today by the monuments that we find in Middle Ages and in other centuries. The Middle Ages is a source of inspiration for us. We cannot copy today the Middle Ages, the details, not in the features of the Middle Ages, but the principles that gave life to the Middle Age. Yes, these principles are always valid. A similar objection could be made against the gospel. Our Lord preached to people in his days, and we say, well, today it doesn't apply to us anymore. I'm not going to answer to this objection. It's so easy. We all know the answer. But the same thing concerns the Middle Age. The principles are valid, and they are always a source of inspiration.